Travis is a representative of the Falls Creek Society. That is the government liaison ministry of Liberty University and the local church there as well. Travis is a representative for them and a board member of the VA Foundation. As I mentioned, a founding father impersonator. He's also a consummate networker, I have found out. And most of all, he's a backer and has caught the vision and understands what we're doing as city elders. And so, to top it all off, he's my friend. And so put your hands together and welcome Travis as he comes to share.
Amen. Come on, brother. Thank you. Good morning, Tulsa. Amen. It is good to be with you. I want to just share a few words about what I am doing and why I am here. I am a pastor, been a pastor for 30 years, headmaster of a Christian school, and my responsibility now is to be the director of strategic outreach for Liberty University. So my responsibility is to think strategically. Now, I get confused as to why they asked me. But anyway, I'm surrounded by a lot of really brilliant individuals who are thinking strategically about what the next steps are for us as believers. Liberty University has started an organization. It was called Falkirk Center. It's now standing for Freedom Center. And our responsibility, as I've shared, is to re-engage the church. So Liberty University is taking a strategic place right now in the body of Christ and saying, if you're not with us, shut up and get out of the way if you're a Christian ministry. Hear what I'm just saying. If you're going to claim Christianity, you're either with us or you're going to be quiet and leave us alone because we're going to be moving forward. They have released me to take off the gloves, so to speak, which is quite exciting, and I'm thankful for that. So I'm a graduate of Liberty University in 1986, and it's now nice to come back and to serve as a member of the director of strategic outreach, standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University. I have some sheets on the front table that I would like to pass out if you'd like to have them. Also, there's a notebook, and again, we just changed our name, so in changing your name, you don't always come up with all the nice little nuances of standing for freedom and that, but we've got a few things. So if you would like to be on our mailing list, and the reason why mailing list is important, we have a book that we put out that gives you information about all the issues that are coming about what's dealing with. We're a think tank. And a part of a think tank is to get the information about thinking out to you quickly rather than thinking about it, spending 3 months trying to write a white page. We want to think about it, get you a video, and go. So I would encourage you to pick up the sheet because on the bottom it has my contact information. It also has our website. So that's enough of an introduction. Let's see if I can take us through this. It's time to start thinking. And I use that term based on a book written years ago, but it's time to start thinking. What is that? What does it look like? A time, okay? How about that? A year? Yeah, 1859 AD and not CE. What happened to that? We're now using CE rather than AD. Hey, start signing your checks 2021 AD. Start making a true statement. Start making sure that every time you go out to eat, you ask the waitress if there's anything you can pray for them about. Because when you do that, you'll find out you'll have some really good conversations. What's that? One. Y'all are good. I'm glad to hear you participating this morning. How about that? 11. What about that? 911. What's wrong with y'all? It's not 911. That's 911. Now, 40 years ago, if we'd have seen 911 on a street sign, what would we have thought? What in the world is that? We'd have called it 911, right? So what's that again? No, it's 9/11. Come on, give me a break. But it really is 9/11. I want you. The reason why I put that up, and this is from Del Tackett out of the Truth Project. He did this, a great analogy. If we don't understand why something is there, we don't realize why it's there. And a part of our problem is we don't understand why we're here. So if we understand That was me, okay. I try to take directions from these three guys right here because they're going to help me make this easier for all of us. So anyway, all right. So what's that? The scripture verse. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. If that's not a good way of using 911 today, 911. How did America go from the land of the free and the home of the brave to the land of the freeloaders and the home of the brash and the brazen? How did it happen? It hasn't happened overnight. It has not happened overnight. St. Augustine made a real interesting quote. He said, hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger that things are the way they are. Courage to make them the way they ought to be. I hope I am speaking to a room of courageous individuals because it's time for courageous individuals to stand up. We are in for the fight of our lives, and if you don't think so, I think we are right now at the exact same place where those individuals who signed that declaration were more than 200 years ago. We are at that place because we're in a battle against a king, and the king is on our own shores. The king is tyranny. The king is progressivism, statism, whatever you want to call it. We're in a battle, and the battle is after us. We are the ones that are in the crosshairs. And so for me, my responsibility, I believe now, is to make sure that when I shoot a gun, it's a high-powered rifle that's aiming at a target and not a shotgun that's splatter blasting everything. We have to be so incredibly strategic that we don't lose because we are in a battle for our lives. There's a couple of worldviews that came out. This is a worldview that started. A biblical God is the ultimate authority. There are absolutes of right and wrong. That's where we as believers stand. But something else came along and says there is no God. Man is the authority. There are no absolutes of right or wrong. When did that happen? 1859. Why 1859? Who's this gentleman? Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin in 1859 wrote a book called The Origin of Species. And in that book, here's what he believed, and here's where we have taken that book. If the contents of this book are not accepted as taught, please understand, not accepted as taught, not written, because what he wrote is not what's being taught, then biblical authority is removed and there's no definition of right and wrong. He opened up Pandora's box for where we're seeing today. But let's take this a little bit further. Charles Darwin in 1859 wrote a book on the origin of species. Is that the full title? Not at all. Look at the rest of the title. By the means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Charles Darwin was a racist. Hear what I'm saying. What we have been taught. It's kind of like this. You know anybody that's a Christian that's a buffet Christian? They go to the buffet and pick out what they want to eat and they leave the rest alone. That's kind of what's happening with Mr. Darwin and what we are doing with Charles Darwin. Look what he said about the eye. To suppose the eye with all of its complexity could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. That's in his book. Now, is the eye complex? Oh my! I look at some of the things in my body, and I don't understand, and I know some people are understanding. Did you know that one of the best ways to determine how long a person has been dead? I mean, this is kind of this weird technology, but you determine how much potassium is still in their eye, because there's something about potassium in the eye that gives you a good indication as to when somebody dies. Weird. I'm sorry. That I don't know where that came from, but anyway. So let's take a look at what happened since 1865. 623,000 deaths in the war between the states. Now that's a lot of deaths. It ended something that should never have begun, but it is what it is. Look at the quote from a gentleman that studied this. I want you to think about this quote. Oh, and by the way, there were 4 times more injured than there were actually dying. Literally millions of young men were raised in the households of women. Rather than learning masculine behavior, they had been raised by mothers who taught nurturing and caring. It is not a stretch to suggest that the casual list of Gettysburg and Chancellorsville produced a feminized, progressive worldview among the emerging generations of reformers. Can you imagine what would have happened if millions of men had been unable to raise their children? Well, that's what happened. And because so many men did not raise their children, culture began to shift. As it is now, culture is beginning to shift because we've lost the reality of one man for one woman for one lifetime. God made two genders, male and female, period. Again, one of the things that we have to do is we have to know what we believe and stand firm on it. In spite of the fact that there will be consequences for standing firm, we must stand firm. Thomas Woodrow Wilson, a Virginian, unfortunately, probably had some pretty big deals in what happened next. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of a transition to get to where we really want to be this morning. The progressive income tax under Woodrow Wilson, direct election of senators, probably the worst decision ever made because it took away states' rights. The 18th Amendment was prohibition of liquor. The 19th Amendment was the women's right to vote. And Woodrow Wilson showed the first film in the White House called The Birth of a Nation, known as the founding document or book of, or moving picture about the Ku Klux Klan. He was a racist. Okay, 1930. Maybe you don't know this quote. Education is thus a most powerful ally of humanism, and every American school is a school of humanism. What can a theistic Sunday school meeting for an hour a week and teaching only a fraction of the children do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teachings? 1930 by a reverend. He was a Unitarian reverend, so he didn't believe in the truth. But look at what happened this is 1930. Why in the world are Christians sending their kids to the Roman schools when it was the Romans who sent their kids to the Christian schools in the first century? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, another one of those individuals. Look at what happened under FDR. Removal of personal and familial responsibility to care for the elderly. Began the process of removing the church from service. Evangelicalism diminishes. State government dependency programs, big government expands dramatically, and senators no longer represent states' interests. The battle for humankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers who correctly perceive their role as proselytizers of a new faith, a religion of humanity. Please understand the educational system in this country is not interested whatsoever in allowing our children to remain Christians. Their goal is to proselytize them to go absolutely against everything that we believe, everything we stand for, and we're yelling and screaming for the schools to open up. When does the church come along and say, we're not sending our kids back to the public institutions anymore, we're going to start our own schools? And we're working with some of that. We had about 70 major evangelical leaders at Liberty University 2 days ago. Flew them in, spent 3 hours talking, flew them out, and we're going to get back together again. The purpose is, where do we come together? How do we get rid of our silos and start engaging as one? And if the church ever, see, here's what the world is trying to tell the church, conform. The church needs to say, no, we will unite. Conformity and unity are not the same thing. They're completely different. Okay, let's keep it on. I believe Americans are illiterate. They're logically illiterate, they're biblically illiterate, they're historically illiterate, and they're literally illiterate. Let's talk about those just real quickly. 3 laws of logic. I'm sharing this, and I'm going to go fast because I'm going to hold the sign up. We'll make sure we're out of here at the right time. But 3 laws of logic. Law of identity. Every word must have the same exact meaning. If 2 people do not use the exact definition, then ambiguity is the result. Seeing that happen today? Oh, yeah. How about this one? The law of the excluded middle. And I'm giving you just 3 issues of logic. If one side of any discussion is true, then nothing in the middle can be entirely correct. And finally, the law of non-contradiction. 2 opposites cannot both be true when used at the same sense and at the same time. oh, what's true for you, sir, is true for you, and what's true for me is true for me. Well, either one of us is right, both of us are wrong, and that's the only options you got. We're both wrong, or either one or the other is right. We cannot both be right at the same time if we're talking two different things. And that's where, oh, well, my truth is my truth, and your truth is your truth, so let's just stay there. Sorry. That doesn't work logically. And when you don't teach logic, what happens? That's what we have. So what happened? We had some educational compromises. 1957, go back to a movie called October Sky. Remember that? Sputnik was sent up. America said, oh my goodness, we got to keep up with Russia, so let's get rid of history and civics, and let's bring out the math and science. There's a major shift right there. 1979, Jimmy Carter, what did he do? Department of Education was federally made a seat. Reagan said he was going to remove it. Reagan didn't. We now have the Department of Education that controls the educational system in America, and what works in your locality doesn't work everywhere, and we need to be doing what we can in our own localities. In 2020, we now have COVID. That's the best opportunity for the church to reclaim education. Will we step up and work out? I hope so. We're working with some folks that are trying to do that on an educational model that really makes good sense, inexpensive, but focuses on biblical truth. Cultural eliminations. We got rid of God, we got rid of the moral compass, and now we've even got rid of ethics. It used to be we thought about what the consequences were of doing something. Now we don't anymore. Just do it. It's okay. We have the technology. Let's make it happen. All right, June 15th, 1962. I want to take you to this place, give you a couple of thoughts about something that happened on June 15th, 1962. And again, we're going to a place where I'm going to close 6 times, and so we'll just let you know that that's the case. I've been closing since first word. June 15th, 1962. Students for a Democratic Society. Anybody ever heard of them? A few of you have. Good. Look at what else. This is what they used to be known as, the Intercollegiate Socialist Society. Also, the Student League for Industrial Democracy. They brought out something called the Port Huron Statement. I would encourage you to read it. If you really want to know what's going on right now, they're telling you. They're going to tell you what's going on right now. 1962, to help you understand why we're here. And it was adopted at the United Auto Workers Union meeting. How interesting. Students working with unions. My. They came up with the word participatory democracy. Everybody needs to participate. Or they also believed in international peace, and notice the next term, 1962. What are we talking about today? Economic justice. We're not talking about something that's just come up recently. We're talking about something that's been around for a while. Economic justice. Look at their last statement in the Port Huron document. If we appear to seek the unattainable, as it has been said, then let it be known that we do so to avoid the unimaginable. So I want to share with you 2 statements that they made. One about politics and one about education. Politics, a massive research and publicity campaign should be initiated showing to every housewife, doctor, professor, and worker the damage done to their interest every day a racist occupies a place in the Democrat Party. Well, they've gotten rid of all the racists in the Democrat Party, so now they're coming after the racist that's happened to be in a church. The shift is never outside of what they want to do. The shift is always to the person that needs to have it done to them. So what do they say about the university? You're going to love this university statement. Education, the only mainstream institution that is open to participation by individuals of nearly every viewpoint. That was in 1962. Now what's it like? Ahmadinejad can speak at Columbia University, but Ann Coulter cannot. What have they done? They have shifted everything, but they started in 1962. We should not be surprised why we are here. But do we have answers? Yes, because God is on the throne. Okay, 1960s. I'm just going to throw up some pictures. You might know the names. Know these guys? Tom Hayden and Jane Fonda. Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers. Huey Newton and Bobby Shirley. Oh, by the way, the Black Panthers, the Black Panther political group, didn't start with these guys. It started in Lounsville, Alabama, because blacks weren't getting to vote. And why did they name it the Black Panther? Not because of color, but because of the way it responded when cornered. These guys, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Yippies, Saul Alinsky. You want to realize what's going on? Go read his book, Rules for Radicals. And finally, this guy, Timothy Leary. Oh boy. Notice that it's all connected. This is all connected, but sometimes putting the dots together is not always easy. So you want a revolution in the 1960s brought us music, Eastern religions, drugs and alcohol, Vietnam and assassinations, homosexuality, not the response. And see, the church, I blame the church for the way we responded to homosexuality. We should have loved them out of their gender dysphoria rather than alienating them because they disagreed with the way I was. We lost it. And now we've raised generations that are now angry at us because we did not step out and help them out of it. Now when we help them out of it, we can go to jail. If I'm a counselor, I can go to jail by giving them, oh boy. You see, it's not something that just happened. It's something that's happened over and over again. Hollywood used to have representatives from the Baptist church telling them, will this movie be accepted by your congregation? Had it until 1962, and they decided to get rid of it in 1969. We had Rosemary's Baby. Women's movement, the pill. I don't know that I can find any kind of scientific evidence, but I believe this to be true. Most of the hormones in the pills that were used in the 60s, 70s, 80s are synthetic. They do not deteriorate. I believe that what we're seeing in our generation right now is a direct relationship to those chemicals that are still mixing into where we don't know whether we're male or female. I can't prove it, but I believe that would be true because there's always a consequence to God's natural order. Credit cards, boy, that was the 1960s things, and then no-fault divorce. So all of this is getting set up for what we're doing. Okay, anybody know what May 4th, 1970 was? Somebody knows it, Kent State. Kent State. What happened there? Kent State, we had violent protest. The violent protest, it ended then. And what did they do? There was a strategy shift. Let's go at politics, education, and media, and let's start practicing the Port Huron Statement. Warren Nord said this, our ways of thinking about nature, morality, art, and society were once fundamentally religious. To understand history and literature, one must understand a great deal about religion. The relative absence of religion from historical textbooks is troubling. That's 1990. Okay, in 2021, not one of the best colleges teach any American history. Nearly 60% of all high school graduates have to go to community college to just get into college. And 23 states do not require any history of America previous to 1877. You wonder why we're in our trouble. You wonder why we're in the difficulties we're in. Okay, I'll just put these up real quickly. America was academically number one in 1962. Dropped significantly would be an understatement. Bottom 15% in math, 35th out of the 40 industrialized nations overall. 1.5 million people graduate every year in this country and they can't even read the diploma that they were given. That's an estimate. Probably more, because you can only fail 1 year. I'm not going to give these quotes because I want to look at our times. 1799, a pastor in this area of America said, America's dangers are of two kinds, those which affect religion and those which affect government. They are so closely allied that they cannot with propriety be separated. The foundations which support the interests of Christianity are also necessary to support a free and equal government like our own. Whenever the pillars of Christianity are overthrown, our present Republican form of government and all the blessings which flow from them must fall with them. We're at a point of no return, and if we don't fight back now, it is going to be a point of no return. I don't know where that is at Niagara Falls, but I know where it is right now with us. Arnold Toynbee, anybody ever heard of this guy? Let me run through some statistics. He studied civilizations. He wrote a book. It's only 7,000 pages long, but it was just a book. But it took him about 23 years to write the book. He researched 26 civilizations, and here's what he said: history repeats itself. Civilizations go growth, Genesis, growth, stabilization, disintegration, and dissolution. I wasn't interested in 4 of them. I was interested in what does a society look like that is disintegrating? Now, these are his writings in the 1920s because he's researched 26 civilizations. Look at what he says. Disintegrating societies lose creative leaders. Disintegrating societies lose self-determination, which means they want external controls. Also, there is an allegiance to mankind which replaces loyalty to the Creator. Ask somebody under 30, where does truth come from? Guess what they tell you? Government. Government is truthful. So is the news, or at least the news that I walk. But again, my truth is my truth. Your truth is your truth. And guess what? Both can be the same. Disintegrating societies do what? Blend religious traditions, or also known as multiculturalism. Oh, can't we just get along? I'm almost tempted to run into anybody that has a coexist bumper sticker on their bike. Do you not know what you are saying? Hey, we can't coexist. Please hear what I'm saying. There is no coexistence with a radical Muslim and a Christian. There's no coexistence. And guess what? They believe they believe in the long term. We believe in the next 6 weeks we'll have a plan. They've had a plan for generations, and we have a plan for the next week. I tend to find fault with some of the writings of Tim LaHaye that has caused the church to back away from being engaged in culture, because Jesus is coming back, right? He's coming back. He's been coming back since 1988. You know, I talked to a Baptist preacher who says, I'm not so sure I'm a pre-tribulation rapture guy anymore. We have to fight and we have to work until he shows up. I don't know when he's coming back. I know he's coming back, but until he gets here, I'm supposed to do what I can do. Okay, let's keep moving. Schism of the soul, Isaiah 5:20. We all know that scripture. Woe be it unto you if you call light darkness, darkness light, salt, or bitter sweet, sweet bitter, evil good, and good evil. That's where we are today. You're the evil ones because you are not woke enough. Slight chance of recovering, and there's only one solution. Let's get to that. Jim Black wrote another book, and I'm not going to go over these real quick because I'm being given a sign of I got a few more minutes. Look at what he said. He gave 9 different reasons for societal decay, and he said nations die when they only have half of them. We've got them all. And I believe the only reason we have them all and we're still here is because God still believes this nation is providentially established, and it's up to us to reclaim it. Okay. Here's what Toynbee said. The plane on which the decisive spiritual battle was likely to be fought was neither the military, nor the political, nor the social, nor the economic, nor the intellectual. For in AD 1952, the critical questions confronting Western man were all religious. What did he say? There is one way for a disintegrating culture to return to a stable culture. It is not government, education, or economy. It must return to the cult of its culture, and the cult of this culture is biblical Christianity. If we do not return to biblical Christianity, the nation at some point in time is over. Period. No other questions, no other answers, period. We must wake up, church. We must wake up. So, let's talk about 3 directives as we close. Number 1, we got to pray. We have to pray, and we got to pray hard. Number 2, we've got to educate. And number 3, we've got to evangelize. We've got to start talking about Jesus to everybody that we speak to. I'm not going to go through prayer work, but does prayer work? Yes, we know it does. Okay. Here's what we did in Bedford County. We found the worst times for crime. We talked to the sheriff, found the worst times for crime, started praying against those crimes. Guess what happened? Crime started going down. So we had to figure out where to pray again. Please understand, prayer works. Commit to prayer for these locations for 6 months and check the results and respond accordingly. You can pray for your board of supervisors, administrators, judges and court workers, neighborhoods needing prayer, pastors in churches, sporting events. I got a t-shirt that says just praying. So we're moving in Virginia to have people walking on the football fields with a t-shirt that says just praying. We're 201 days from elections in Virginia. We have an election every year. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General this year, all House of Delegates, and me of the Board of Supervisors and school boards. We are on the front line for 2022. Where Virginia goes is going to have some significant impact on where we are in 2022. So I encourage you to pray for Virginia because we're in a battle. And that's a part of what I'm doing is how do we get the church engaged in Virginia by November the 2nd to flip Virginia back to being a red state. We're only 572 days from November the 8th, 2020. We got our work cut out for us. Pray. Talk about the educational difficulties real quickly. We're biblically illiterate, historically illiterate, we're illiterate, we're logically inept. Anybody ever heard of the Waldorf schools? What's their key? Until you're 13, no screens. No screens. No TV, no internet, no phones. Why? If we give you phones before that time, according to the people who are using them, who run the companies that sell us this stuff, here's what they say. We will destroy our children's creativity if we give them a screen before 13. But they have no problem with doing that to our kids. Wow. Okay. It's all about me, mine, and if I want yours, I'll take it. We're working on helping Christians understand their rights in public schools. Look at the reading statistics. By the time you're 10 years old, if you're not reading, you're going to jail. And you're not going to get a job. Okay, there's a lot of these things. We're going to start Saturday schools in Virginia. Saturday schools that teach kids how to read phonetically. What a great time to do that right now. Great time to do that all across the nation. Churches, open up your schools, open up your church buildings for just 3 hours on Saturdays and teach, because Sunday schools were not taught to teach Bible stories. They were taught to teach what? People how to read and write. Wow, why don't we just get back to that? Okay. Whoever wants the next generation most will get them. Sherwood Baptist Church is the one that came up with the movie Courageous, fireproof. Okay. Evangelism, every home for Christ, great place to go for information. Bless Every Home is another good place to get some information on evangelism. Know the way of the master if you want to talk about that. The most important thing is to bring people to Christ. The second most important thing is to preserve the freedom to do the most important thing. Bill Federer said that. Good point. Okay, I want to leave you with some quotes. All I can do is put myself in the vicinity of truth and then hope to understand the evidence encountered. This requires both intellectual and spiritual integrity. I've shared some things today that should shock you, but cause you to act. You cannot stand still and not act about some of these things. You can evade reality, but you cannot evade the consequences of evading reality. Okay, I'm not going to go through these, but I want to give you these quotes. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or your arms. Couch down and lick the hands that feed you. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget you wherever our countrymen. Boom. He wasn't a good beer maker, but he certainly loved to write. One last quote. The fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and conduct of this army. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or most abject submission. We have therefore to resolve, conquer or die. Conquer or die. God bless you.
If we want to remain in a free country, if we want the United States of America to remain free for our children and our grandchildren, then the men and women of God across this nation must stand up, must unify, must be collective in their efforts, and must do so right now.